Good morning, metalheads of the internet, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Metal Meltdown. Today we are talking about the latest studio album from the ocean entitled Holocene. This is the 9th full-length studio album and apparently the final entry in an absolutely massive multi-part album series from German progressive sludge post-metal crew The Ocean, sometimes referred to as the Ocean Collective as well. Even by the standards of progressive metal, The Ocean has put out some pretty high-concept nonsense and tomfoolery for sure. A lot of these albums are linked in some way, shape, or form. The Ocean deals a lot with introspective and reflective themes while talking about the Earth and history and geology and various eras of prehistoric existence and time. There's consistently a lot to digest. I mean, it's dense, arguably quite convoluted and overwhelming, especially to those who maybe are not the most familiar with progressive rock and progressive metal, and especially with how The Ocean specifically executes it. But when The Ocean gets it right, they get it so absurdly, scarily motherfucking right. It's unfucking real. To this day, 2012's Pelagic is still, in my opinion, one of the greatest progressive metal albums of all time, ever. One of the best metal albums of the 2010s. This multi-part album journey that The Ocean has been on since about 2018 has been pretty exciting as well. I was a big fan of Phanerozoic 1 when it dropped in 2018. I was a big fan of Phanerozoic 2 when it dropped in 2020. I had the pleasure of speaking with their guitarist, Robin Stapps, here on the Metal Meltdown as well, right around that time. These two albums acted together as a spiritual successor to 2007's Precambrian, dealing with a lot of stress and anxiety through the lens of the evolution of mankind and the planet Earth. Though not officially labeled so, this new album Holocene acts as a surprise threequel, something we didn't think we'd get, something we didn't know we wanted, but I mean, I'm pretty happy that we did get, or at least I'm happy that I did get, because it's great. Whereas the aforementioned Precambrian and Phanerozoic 1 and 2 dealt primarily with the ancient past, Holocene deals more specifically with the more recent present. We've entered the digital age, the modern era, and The Ocean apparently has a lot to say about the digital age and the modern era. One could very easily make the argument that this is their most urgent and poignant and relevant album to date. Throughout the album, The Ocean expressed their discomfort and disgust for the current social and political climate, how technology and the internet have become more prevalent and essential to daily life, how there's no real actual discourse and discussion about things that actually matter. Musically, too, the album has entered a more modern digital era as well. There are more electronic elements across the record, synthesizers, industrial components, and bits and pieces. Ultimately, the album does a really good job at feeling familiar but fresh, offering everything that most people want from The Ocean while throwing in tons of twists and turns and all kinds of other new stuff for new potential audiences. Pre-Boreal opens the album on a strong and stunning note, a lot of smooth cybernetic atmospherics, a lot of really cool synth work, a lot of meditative, hypnotizing vocal textures and dynamics. The way that it grows and builds and swells and climbs, coupled with its darker aura and energy, weirdly reminds me of some mashup of like late 2000s Nine Inch Nails and Tool. Sea of Reeds is very slow and quiet, a much more contemplative number with some subtle but regal horns and some more timid vocal work. Eventually it does begin to blossom, but even then you're not dealing with a sudden burst of like progressive sludge metal. I like this approach though. It kind of feels like I'm sailing on the Sea of Reeds myself with The Ocean, and we're just going on an adventure. Maybe not the most exciting adventure ever, but an adventure nonetheless. We're learning more about ourselves and each other. Atlantic initially follows a pretty similar blueprint, slow, quiet, contemplative, with some more minimalistic beats and vocals and such. It spends a lot of time wisely building up as much tension and atmosphere and emotion as possible, but unlike Sea of Reeds, there is a full-blown detour into progressive sludge metal. Love how angular and technical and punishing it is. I love how thick and earthy the guitars and bass are. Parabiosis is a pretty weird, hectic, and busy number filled with all kinds of different sound effects and textures and soundscapes. Some really beautiful keyboard work here. I love how natural and organic this feels despite all the electronic elements, despite how busy it is. Undeniably, the star of the show on this album, though, is Unconformities. Period. It's not even up for debate. Anyone arguing otherwise has not listened to this song. Out of everything on this album, this feels the least like something that the Ocean would do, and it's also simultaneously the best song on the album and maybe one of the best songs the Ocean have ever put together. Like, this is legit Song of the Year contender. For the first half of this number, longtime vocalist Loa Cressetti steps back for a wee bit, whereas Swedish songwriter and singer Karen Park steps up. With her and her fragile, wondrous, yearning, heavy unvibrato vocals at the helm, guiding the ship, the Ocean begin to foray into almost like classic post-punk territory, albeit with a more progressive edge. Immaculate Grooves and Flow does a great job at communicating angst and anxiety without sounding like a total fucking bummer. Things get very weird, very brutal, and very quickly, though. Seemingly out of nowhere, we're introduced to these repetitive, overlapping vocals and all this insane, over-the-top percussion and all these crushing, almost thrashy guitars. It's unrelenting, it's uncompromising, it's unorthodox. It genuinely kind of feels like Mr. Bungle took over, or some other kind of Mike Patton project, like Dead Cross. I feel like this song is going to end up being a love or hate kind of thing, and I'm sure, as you can tell, I lean towards love. I really do think this is one of the best things the Ocean has ever put out, one of the most unpredictable tracks, and one of the best songs I've heard so far this year. Somewhat unintentionally, and despite the album's craziest moments, I would also argue this is the Ocean's most accessible album. There is no second disc, there is no instrumental version, the whole thing wraps up in a pretty sharp 53 minutes and has a pretty decent overall flow to it, a lot of strong, memorable hooks and sections. Though a part of the Precambrian Phanerozoic concept album series, it benefits from being somewhat slightly removed from it as well by being rooted again in the here and now. I honestly don't really have any complaints whatsoever. I just think it's a great fucking record. One of the more interesting and memorable things I've seen from progressive metal in 2023. I'm feeling a pretty strong 4 out of 5, maybe leaning slightly towards a 4.5 out of 5. This thing's great. I feel like this could end up being a slightly more divisive album. The review from Angry Metal Guy definitely seemed to imply that everyone at Angry Metal Guy HQ is kind of mixed on this, not really sure how to feel. And if that's the case for a lot of y'all, so be it, but me personally, I thoroughly enjoyed every single second of this, and it kind of makes me excited for this new chapter of this concept album series to continue, if that is even something the Ocean is working on, of course. Overall, 4 out of 5, definitely check it out, at the very least check out Unconformities. Great record. And that is it for the Metal Meltdown. I'm not an expert, nor do I claim to be. So what do you think? Do you like this record? Do you not like this record? And what do you want to hear from me next? And thank you for watching. Make sure you press subscribe right here so you get updates on the Metal Meltdown fucking immediately. And as always, you have yourself a fantastic fucking day.